The industry standard, without a doubt. I'm speaking of the tight end position, of course, at Iowa. I got to say, I measure this sport from so many different angles concerning the elite programs and beyond. And I don't know that there's a truer, more decisive statement in college football over the last 10 or 15 years than Iowa being tight end U. We will discuss that as it moves into 2025. And also look at the recent recruiting efforts by Kirk Ferentz and his staff right here at Hawkeyes Live, right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. It's a Tuesday staple of your day, of course, 4:30 Central Time. Corey Bratta here, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hey, Corey.
Good to see you, Mark.
What's
the early part of February look like for the Voice of College Football? I know you're still full steam on recruiting, and I know we've discussed this before, but we're weeks away now from some spring ball starting. What's the first? Is Clemson the first? Pretty early.
Missouri usually jumps out there early.
Missouri, okay.
They are the one that is very consistent with that. I think Kansas State is as well for some reason, but Missouri for sure. In terms of what's on my docket, a lot of things to clean up from the 24 season and then moving into 25, a lot of hot seat coaches. We've got 14 we're looking at. We'll release that video in a couple of days. Just released our rankings of first-year coaches for 2024, who was number one, and there were 14 of them that we ranked, again, 1 through 14. We're going to go through the TV ratings through each team and each conference. We'll do a series on that, looking at every conference. We did the power rankings for each individual conference. Then we also put it all together to do the actual conference rankings as well in terms of how they stack up. And yes, the Big Ten is the best conference in America. There could be a good argument for the SEC based on win-loss record outside the conference, but just the weight of the Big Ten's wins and losses. And if you look at the seeding difference, this is what was remarkable to me, Corey, is that the Big Ten, I gave a seeding difference to each game, meaning I seeded each conference. So the weight of the games was distributed based on the seedings because I wanted to give proper weight to the games, because if the best team in a particular conference beats the worst team in another conference, that shouldn't be given as much weight. And the seeding difference of what the Big Ten was able to do, really, the Big Ten didn't suffer any bad losses the entire season, really, outside the conference. They really didn't. They didn't lose to a group of 5, didn't lose to an FCS. Only conference that could say that.
Bad losses from a perspective of the national.
And a seeding difference. Like the third best team in the Big Ten didn't lose to like the 10th best team in another conference. Right. They just did not have any losses that were not understandable losses.
I would consider, regardless of how good Iowa State ended up being, Iowa blowing a double-digit lead at home to Iowa State as a bad loss. But I understand I understand the premise that you're working with. And I'm curious, based on the numbers you've ran, how instrumental, or I guess how decisive was Ohio State's national championship had they not won?
That certainly helped the cause.
I mean, it wouldn't have been another mark for the SEC because Notre Dame's an independent, but how big of an impact was that?
Yeah, it would not have lifted the SEC. It would have dropped the Big Ten. And just to give some surface numbers, the SEC had the best record against the other conferences at the Big Ten was 16-16. The SEC was 20-13 against the other 3 conferences. So if you just look at that, well, then the analysis is, well, the SEC's better. They had a better record. They also had a better non-conference record throwing in the group of 5 in the FCS. But oh my goodness, again, you weight everything else. The SEC had some bad losses. Yeah, you take off beating Tennessee. Of course, the Oregon game doesn't count because it's an in-conference game, but Tennessee, Texas, and Notre Dame. And I don't believe I would have ranked the Big Ten number 1 if those wins are not on the board.
With one thing that I will comment on, I think now that you've come out with those results, I think probably SEC homers and advocates, one thing they haven't maybe used as much in their argument that they probably should have is the ascension of Vanderbilt, because for years Big Ten fans have, SEC fans and Big Ten fans have gone back and forth for a long time. Rutgers was this horrific program that was just disgusting for the Big Ten's results, but the Big Ten's always been able to look at Vanderbilt and say, that they're totally outclassed. It's a horrible bottom of the conference, and you can't say that this year. I mean, this is the first year in quite some time where they were good. I mean, they weren't just decent; they were good, and not elite, but good. And I'll be interested to see what they do next year with the return of their quarterback. But tomorrow's normally, at least in years past, it's been a big day, and no longer. Of course, we say this now every year, but Iowa does have some guys signing. One being scholarship DB that they landed this week, Jacob Wallace out of the eastern side of the United States, and then they also got a really productive walk-on receiver from Spirit Lake, so Okoboji area up by the Minnesota border. What's interesting about Selecta, the kid's last name, I've already butchered his last name. Stecker. I don't know why I had Selecta in my mind. Stecker, he put up some really big numbers this past year, and my understanding is he did have some scholarship offers to some other places, and Iowa does not. You're following this roster retention and the drop down to 105 or roster numbers for a particular school. There's not going to you cannot carry as many walk-ons, and Iowa had to part with a number of guys who had contributed to the program, both on the field and off the field and behind the scenes. And so every guy that Iowa adds as a walk-on, I think, is notable now. I know you're not in my position, Mark, but I'm tempted to start just doing commitment videos for all commitments, including walk-ons now, because the numbers are so much lower. I might start doing that because, and the other thing about this is, too, I mean, look at this past year. You have injury problems at quarterback. Tim Lester, new quarterback's coach, brings in a walk-on who, in his case, it was a little different. Jackson Stratton was on scholarship at Colorado State. He had held a Washington offer out of high school, but he ends up being Iowa's starting quarterback for a time during this past season. So those are interesting stories, but I think overall, like the class they have of 5 walk-ons currently in line to be on the roster next year. Braden Jackson, who's the son of the great Bills running back, Fred Jackson, who attended a college here in the state of Iowa. Ryan Fitzgerald, quarterback, son of Pat Fitzgerald. Dylan Stecker, again, late ad here. Was one day before, couple of days, I guess, was when he committed prior to this late signing period. And then Caden Boer, kicker. He's obviously going to have a shot to be the heir apparent to Drew Stevens, especially with the departure of Trip Woody, who was tampered with and left for Syracuse. And I just can't get over that. Sorry. And then defensive back Race Heitman, and I believe that's it. And then Stecker from Spirit Lake. So this kid's got good height. Iowa's, there's another guy that I don't want to say he resembles from a stature perspective, but Reese Vandersey's a scholarship kid who came from Northwest Iowa and is big and productive at his small school, and kind of a similar situation here with Dylan, but he'll be coming in as a PWO.
You can't get over the tampering because of the status or lack thereof of the player. Is that it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You could say that. You could say that. Yes. I like I've said before, I can't. So Trip Woody was a 5-star out of high school. I could tell you the staff was not impressed with him. He may be a great young man. I'm just saying from what he showed on the field as a freshman. The special teams star rankings are different. They're not ranked like 247 Sports ain't ranking Trip Woody as a 5-star recruit. It's Cole's kicking and and they know what they're doing too. But I'm just saying 5-star, 4-star, they're different, 2 different worlds when you start ranking kickers and punters. And like I say, just the fact that Syracuse went out and nabbed him before he had even entered the portal. I don't think Iowa had a problem with it. That's what's nuts about it. But Iowa needed to replace him then, right? And there was a moment in time where I think some fans were hopeful that Iowa would be able to land Drew's younger brother, Jack Stevens, because their head coach, South Dakota State, took the job at Wazoo. Jimmy Rogers brought a bunch of guys with him, including Jack Stevens, who's going to be on scholarship there. So, don't blame him for taking a job with the Cougs. And, obviously their conference future is a little bit murky, I guess, but still to be on scholarship, have your education paid for and all that. But no, it's an intriguing class, I'd say, for the walk-ons, and we'll see a couple of these guys sign tomorrow.
Contributions welcome here at the Voice of College Football. We get together with Corey each and every Tuesday. And I got to say, Corey, before I move on with a few questions, and we bring Wallace into the conversation as well, anything that you propose to do concerning football or women's basketball, my answer is going to be do it, do it, do it. You have the attention of the Iowa Hawkeye fan base.
Yeah, no, these are sort of the dog days, I guess. I mean, when we hit spring practice, there's going to be things to talk about, and you've always got things to talk about, as do I. But in general, there's not a lot going on. You have a couple of signees that'll sign tomorrow, but this signing period is so much, it just takes a far back. It's a limousine backseat to the early signing period in December. And so, yeah, some of these ideas I think I'm going to have to capitalize on. And you've given me some, I think what you've provided would be an excellent, and I probably should have started it a while back, but if I think ranking the top 50 Iowa players is a great idea. I mean, I don't know that I can rank 105 just simply because I don't want to be that guy 50. I don't want to be that guy that ranks Dylan Stecker as number 105. Not that I would, Dylan. We love you. Welcome to the swarm. But I don't want to be that guy. But no, there's good things coming. And obviously, once basketball ends, and I think men's basketball, I published a video last night. I doubt you saw it because I know you don't follow the sport, but I think they're done. Their leading scorer, Owen Freeman, who's also their leading rebounder and block guy, he's out for the season. There are rumors swirling about his, potentially entering the portal after the season's end. Who knows if that's true or not, but he is getting a surgery done on his right hand, and he will miss the year. They have nobody behind him at the 5 that is viable, and they play top 10 Purdue team tonight. They welcome a top 25 Wisconsin team over the weekend that just absolutely spanked them up in Madison here, a month or two ago. So it'll be interesting to see. I think we may have we are going, without question, unless something drastic changes, we're going to have some very interesting conversations about the program, the Iowa men's basketball program, Fran McCaffrey's future, probably in about a month or so. But in the meantime, we'll still have post-game coverage tonight. No live post-game for Iowa-Purdue. We'll have a recorded recap, and then we'll pick up live post-game coverage Thursday. How about the Hawkeye women? I know you didn't watch it, Mark, but they needed a win.
Shocker.
Against a marquee team, and they went and beat number 4 in the country, USC, on the day that Caitlin Clark had her jersey retired. It was nationally televised on Fox, so it was a good day. I mean, really good day for Hawkeye fans in general. People that follow my show, know my podcast, they know that I was not in a right or a good frame of mind sports-wise Sunday morning, just hours removed from one of the worst trades in NBA history, worse than anything I've ever seen, in Luka Dončić being traded for Anthony Davis. Horrific management, horrific GM decision. I've never seen anything like it. I didn't even think it was possible. I think I speak for a lot of Mavericks fans that didn't think it was possible that you could be so stupid as to move a guy like Luka Dončić. No, it wasn't a money move.
I don't know anything about it, but you were not the first person that I've heard, and I know nothing about this. I don't follow it. I just know the name, and so I assume he's a great player. But I've seen it on social media that this is a stupid trade. So if just common fans see that it's a bad trade from a talent standpoint, then I just don't understand.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it really is. And I've been following the Mavs my whole life, and I look back at the glory days now. I thought we were still in the glory days because Nico Harrison, the GM, who's a Nike guy and has actually a history with Anthony Davis and with Jason Kidd, etc. And JJ Redick for that matter. I had a lot of respect for him prior to this move. He'd brought in a lot of good players. This team, although dealing with a onslaught of injuries this year, They are as loaded. Okay, yeah,
Our buddy Levi is
isn't it
stopping by with
interesting?
this
Levi
one.
Stevenson is showing up here to debate me on something that has nothing to do with his cyclists. Anyways, so I had a lot of respect for Nico. He'd built this team up to being, when they were all healthy together, they were playing as well as anybody in the league. Luka Dončić, let me just give you a rundown here, Mark. He's a he's a first team All NBA guy for 5 straight years. They brought him in on draft night. He's been the face of the franchise since Dirk Nowitzki retired, who, by the way, has a statue in front of American Airlines Center and stayed with Dallas his entire career, brought a title to Dallas in 2011. Luka has since brought the Mavs to a Western Conference Finals, and then last year, all the way to the NBA Finals for the first time. Arguably deserved the MVP, regular season MVP last year. May have won it this year had he qualified for the number of games required to be eligible for that award, because oftentimes they stagger this award. And, Jokic won it last year. He probably should have gotten it 2 years ago. And Luka Dončić had no idea, did not request a trade out. And yes, he would have been eligible for the Supermax. He said today during his press conference with the Lakers, he had given no indication. He even laughed at the idea that he'd given any indication to the Mavs front office that he would have turned the Supermax down. And in NBA history, it's never happened. A guy with the accolades of Luka Dončić would a team ever not award him a Supermax. Money's part of sports. You pay the great players, and he is a top 3 player in the league. And fans were protesting outside of American Airlines Center. I've never seen anything like it. And Nico Harrison still has a job, but the problem is Mark Cuban sold the majority of team ownership to a family in Vegas, is what Levi Stevens is referring to. They're not basketball people. They're sports casinos people, mainly casinos people, business people, of course. And so Nico Harrison didn't have to get approval from Mark Cuban. Back in the day when Mark Cuban ran this team, this would have never happened. He even joked a few years ago when he was still involved heavily and wasn't 1% of ownership. He joked that if you had to ask him, would he divorce his wife or let go of Luka Dončić first? He said, meet me at the lawyer's office Monday morning. He was joking, of course, but yeah, it's unbelievable. And like I say, I'm as big of a Mavs fan out there. I wore my Dončić jersey for the postgame show Sunday, and they got a great player in Anthony Davis, but it's different. I mean, you know this, Mark. You're a sports guy. It's one thing to be a great player, and then it's another thing to be a generational player. Generational. And, the front office has argued, well, he didn't take care of himself enough, and they didn't like his conditioning. He got too heavy at times. What has he done on the court? I mean, who cares? Who cares? I mean, yeah, you'd like him to be in better shape and not to get hurt as much, but who cares? He just took your team to an NBA title. He had stated in his letter saying goodbye to Mavs fans that he intended to remain in Dallas his entire career. And I believe that he's not being facetious when he says that. It's just too bad. I feel so bad for him. And I have never been a Lakers fan. I do think Kobe Bryant, I really admire Kobe. What a tragic story with his death and all that. But his career at LA was incredible. And I have a lot of respect for what he did. Have never been a Lakers fan. I'm not a Lakers fan now, but I don't know how I cannot root for the Lakers. I was thinking about that today. Like, I don't know how I can, with a straight face, not root for the Lakers when I feel so bad, even though he's making tons of money. That's not about the money.
Sure.
He literally was half asleep when he got the phone call, and no idea. Nobody else knew except the GM for the Mavs ownership and the GM for the Lakers and that ownership. No one knew. Not the head coaches, not the players. LeBron James didn't know, who played with Anthony Davis. He just feels so bad for him. So anyway, we can get off that, but I've talked a little bit about it over the weekend, and that's what's been on my mind, not college sports as much.
Well, I think that we all would tend to root for that player that's moved on from our favorite team when it's not his decision. When he was loyal, he wanted to stay versus just free agent. See, I'm going to the highest bidder. No, this is a different situation. All right. Yeah, I was unaware of that, except for I heard the name and that there was a trade. And
and by the way, Real Malice in the chat. He says, if the people that are paying you generational wealth tell you to lose 10 to 20 pounds, you do it. Simple as. You can reverse that whole statement, because what you're saying, the opposite is true. The opposite is true. When you are a generational athlete, okay, even if you're 10 to 20 pounds too heavy, if you're playing at a generational level, you pay whatever you have to pay to keep them there. And money was not the issue for Luka Dončić. That's been widely publicized. So that's just, I'm sure somebody that doesn't know the situation, but everybody, I mean, even all the pundits, everybody, not just the fans, has said it's one of the most shocking, disturbing trades from a Mavs standpoint, and from an NBA standpoint that we've ever seen.
Ooh, Jackson.
I already gave Jackson.
This. Thank you for the contribution. What would you consider the Iowa equivalent of the Mavs trading Luka for Anthony Davis?
Well, I sort of already answered this question over the weekend. It would be the same as the Fever. Okay, now I know the money is not in the WNBA, but from a skill and a figure standpoint, we all know how important Caitlin Clark is to the Fever. What a jackpot that they, by getting that draft pick, right? It would be the equivalent of them saying, well, Caitlin's defense really isn't good, because Luka's defense isn't good either, Mark. All right. It'd be the equivalent of the Fever saying, well, Caitlin's defense isn't really that good, so we're going to get another great player that plays defense.
He's a generational player who can't play defense?
No, it's not that he can't play. Mark, have you watched the NBA in the past 10 to 20 years? Guys don't in general work,
especially out that far.
The great players don't work as hard defensively. It's not that he can't play. I saw him play great defense last playoff series against the Thunder to get to the Western Conference Finals last year. I'm just saying guys take breaks on defense, and especially guys he is one of maybe the 2 or 3 best scorers in the world, maybe the best, frankly. And so, but my point is, Caitlin Clark's defense isn't anything to write home about, Mark. But she's still Caitlin Clark. Can you imagine how stupid that would be for the Fever just to all of a sudden just trade her? It'd be, I know that seems extreme, but that's what it is. So I don't know if that answers Jackson's question. There's really no other equivalent that I can imagine.
Well, there's not, because it's college athletics.
Right.
So there are no trades.
And college guys are gone after. One of the things I said, I didn't really talk about this on my channel. I may cut some of this out and put it on my channel, by the way, Mark. But one of the things I said the other day in response to this, as it relates to Iowa fans and kind of an equivalent for Iowa, what I have grown to appreciate over my life as a sports fan with college athletics, which has been taken away to a large extent, is being able to form not as someone that actually knows some people on the inside now, having covered the sport the way I'm covering it now, but even before, as a fan, you almost build a rapport and a relationship with players when they're with your team for 4 to 5 years. And although it stinks to see them go, you got 4 to 5 years with them. With the NBA and with the NFL and these different leagues, guys can hop around every 1 to 2 to 3 years. And so that was something that was special about college. And they weren't getting paid, so it felt more authentic, right? Now, players are getting paid enormous sums of money, more power to them, but I think it takes away from the authenticity that what drew me to the sport initially. Guys are able to leave. Some guys are playing for 4 different schools in a period of 4 to 5 years. So that element of college athletics has now went by the wayside. So one of the few things left for me as a sports guy with a franchise like Dallas is I was able to watch Dirk Nowitzki from a young age all the way till retirement and all the way until they hung his jersey in the rafters. And here's a humble superstar that won a championship for your franchise. That is what sports is all about, in my opinion. They hand the keys over to Luka Dončić. In general, you can complain about his conditioning, complain about his weight at times. Okay, he doesn't play great defense. By the way, Dirk didn't play great defense either, but that's beside the fact. You can argue about it if you want, but the reality is he would have stayed with Dallas his entire career. And what do? What does the front office do? You flush all that down the toilet. You say, we're done. We don't care. Nothing. We don't even let the fans say goodbye to him because we're trading him mid-season. I mean, we're keeping it on the down low for obvious reasons, but he's been hurt since Christmas Day, and now he's gone. You'll never see him, conceivably never see him in a Mavs jersey again. So it's like that small facet of sports, being able to build that rapport and that long-standing relationship with your favorite players that has so disappeared in college athletics, to me, was just seriously hampered and hurt by this move. And I think a lot of fans probably feel the same way. Maybe not for the same reasons, but there's a lot of emotions with the fan base because of it.
Well, I don't know how this is going to play out in college athletics in regards to the loyalty or the attachment that the fans have to the players, because there is still a high level of attachment from the fans to professional athletes who, again, move on from team to team, depending on the situation. So this is obviously a shock to the college fan who is used to, fill in the blank of your favorite Iowa football, basketball players of all time. They obviously were simply Iowa players, start to finish, throughout their careers. There's no compromise of their loyalty or their identity with a team. But that's going to change going forward. Now, are college fans going to adjust? Or are they going to just feel slighted and that's not going to go away? I think it's never going to completely go away, because you just can't. Or are they going to become more accustomed to this being somewhat like professional sports, where you might have your favorite player but in professional sports, because of the length of the careers, you could, even though your favorite player may have played for 3 teams in the NBA, maybe he was with your team for 9 years, not 1 year or 2 years, and then he was going from Iowa to Washington to Oklahoma.
And like you said, it'd be different if your favorite player had intentions of leaving or didn't feel loyalty. But you as fans, you build this loyalty, and then to hear your superstar, right? Superstar say at his next stop in his introductory press conference, one of the big things I value as a player is loyalty, which is so rare. And you can say, well, that's just lip service, but he hadn't shown disloyalty. he is not the one that made that decision. He's with Dallas since he got drafted 7 years ago or whatever. And by the way, may I just add this? I want to just address this one more time. Real malice. Yeah, Luka's an incredible talent. He'd be better without the extra weight, which can be said about many talented athletes. It's about Luka not being the best version of Luka. Again, that's not the issue or the debate at hand. Nobody's debating that Luka could have been better or would be better with less weight and better conditioning. But the fact of the matter is, he was a generational superstar talent, first team All-NBA guy for 5 straight years with the extra weight, without being in conditioning. That's the point. You can complain and nitpick all you want, but the reality is he was worth the money as is. And there's no debate of that, really. The only person debating that is Nico freaking Harrison. So I just wanted to make that very clear where I stand on that. Nobody's debating that, guys would be better if they're in better shape, et cetera, et cetera.
I understand both sides of that debate. Because if your performance delivers, regardless of whether you practice hard enough, lift enough weights, whatever, but you can somehow, because of your ridiculous amount of talent, you can deliver, then you can deliver. But at the same time,
what's there to understand on the other side of the coin? What's there to understand?
Well, I don't know. Are we talking about a top 5 player in the sport? Is that what we're okay?
Yes.
And he was being paid as such?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's been paid as such. He's eligible for a supermax, which is what the best players in the league get. But he was a top 3 scorer, top 5 player in the league as is. They're not getting a top 5 player.
I get it. I understand your point. Believe me, top to bottom. I also understand being an owner saying, I'm going to have a conversation with you to say,
sure, yeah.
If you want to be, you're one of the top 5 players in the sport, but if you want to be at another level,
sure.
If Michael Jordan was a teammate of Luka Dončić, he might have had a conversation that might have not been the most pleasant.
LeBron James may have a conversation with Luka, and he may be the driving force for Luka Dončić to get in better shape. Nobody's debating that. What I'm saying is, even in his state, at Dallas, they had conversations with him. Obviously, they didn't like the effort he was putting forth off the court. But if you're going to move somebody, then move him and get what he's worth back, or at least close. They're not getting any. They're not getting. I mean, the trade value that they got back. Anthony Davis is a really good player, but you're talking about a top 3 guy in the league, top 5 guy in the league who's 25, and you're getting back a top 10 to 15 guy who's 32, plus a rookie, and Dallas sent them a first-round draft pick. So it's all that combined, Mark. It's not just the disloyalty to Luka Dončić and getting rid of him when he's a franchise guy. It's also the fact that the trade was so uneven. You're dealing, he didn't request it. You're dealing a guy who had no intentions of leaving for substantially less from the perspectives of everybody else but management. That's a big part of the issue here. But anyways,
I think we've concluded the longest NBA discussion in the history of the network.
Yeah, and it probably will remain that.
We can clip that off for the voice of NBA, the voice of NBA. We can start that channel. But yes, feel free, of course, to clip this off for your own platform. But this obviously hit you pretty hard.
Yeah, this is like I said, the most shock I've been as an NBA fan, as a Mavs fan, my whole life. So, and it's just, you start to think, well, it's all came down to Cuban sold, and it's the new owner, because this doesn't happen under Mark Cuban. I don't care if Nico Harrison's there or not; it just doesn't happen under Mark Cuban. But Nico's been given basically dictatorial power, penultimate authority here. So it's amazing. Who's going to force him to? Who's going to fire him? The owners that don't know what they're doing, that from many people's point of view, they're driving the franchise into the ground. So Mavs fans are just left where they are. They have no driving force. The only thing they can do, like college fans can do, is stop going to games. But I don't really think that matters. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that really matters. And by the way, they have a chance to win right away, and nobody's debate. They're still a very good team with Davis if he's healthy. But the whole thing, we're talking long term. This is a career. This is a 5 to 10 year change that they just made for a guy who's 32 and might be able to get. But they got to win. I believe they have to win 2 titles with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis to make that move worth it. And even then, I don't know in my heart of hearts if I would have done that in hindsight. And I don't think they'll win 2 titles, but we'll see.
I was trying to figure out the last time I cared that a professional athlete left a team or was traded. And I got to go back maybe to the 2008, 2009 range with the Cleveland Indians.
I was going to say there's some
Pathia, Cliff Lee. Yeah, those guys.
There's some plenty of wasn't there a Padres guy? I'm not a baseball guy. I know you were back in the day, but somebody brought up, was it a Padres or a Brewers guy that I don't remember what it would have been, who it would have been.
Raleigh Fingers. He played for those 2 teams. Dave Winfield, when he left the Padres, he signed for the biggest. He signed for the biggest contract in baseball at the time with the Yankees.
Yeah, that could have been it. But it seems like
that was him leaving.
Right. It's not apples to apples at all.
No. So. All right. So moving from Luka Dončić and staying on that same level of popularity and exposure and impact, this Dylan Stecker. So you kind of outlined the new wide receiver. You'll do a profile on him at some point. And I noticed that he was the 13th rated player in the state of Iowa, which was going to lead me to a point that you've made over the last several years, that Iowa has dominated the in-state talent pool. Has that continued?
That's not going to make Levi Stevenson very happy. He's in the chat.
I know that. And that's what reminded me of it. Saying his comment, I thought, okay, we can stir up the Iowa versus Iowa State. Who gets the best players in the state?
Oh, before he gets his pants up in a wad. No, he already got to get in there and comment. No, they did not dominate in 2025. I don't know if you have the results of 2025 in-state recruiting, but I could certainly pull that up as well. But no, I think we talked about this before, because wasn't it 23-24 Iowa really dominated, and then 25 Iowa State seemed to dominate. And I also wonder if some of that, a lot of that took place even before Tim Lester joined. but you'd have to think the influence of Lester, along with John Budmeyer, who's not an Iowa guy, and Liddell Betts has done great work in Florida. Obviously, at that position, not that Iowa typically does a whole lot at running back in the state, besides maybe Brevendal and a couple other guys. But a lot of the in-state guys have been, you can see Thomas Meyer at the top. So Iowa does have the top guy, and Joey Van Wetsing is a really talented lineman, regardless of which side of the ball he ends up playing. I mean, like Caleb Hack, is it Hack? Caleb Hack ends up going from Marengo, ends up going to NIU. So, that right off the bat, I don't know a lot about him, but that makes me think his rating is maybe, I can't imagine he went to Northern Iowa or Northern Illinois in general because I don't know anything about his recruitment, but Alex Mansky, Iowa didn't really care. I don't really think Iowa cared a whole lot about him down the stretch because they had their quarterback. Obviously, Mason Woods is LeVar's son. So I wouldn't say Iowa State dominated. I mean, they have more guys here in the top 10. Do they? I guess it's close.
They've got 3 of the top 6.
Yeah, 3 of the top 6. Yeah. So if you're looking at it from that
4
perspective,
of 7, 5 of 9.
Yeah, and then Braden Jackson's not even on scholarship. It's not a real strong in-state class.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's the other part of this. Xavion Robinson, Iowa wanted him for a while. I don't know about Curvy. I know he's a Jayhawk. And then, Stecker. And then I don't think, is there anybody else that we're waiting on? Scroll down a little bit. I don't know anything about
Code.
I don't know anything about him. Don't know anything about. I'm not a Iowa high school recruiting guy, but I don't think in general it was as strong of an in-state class. Elliot Clough would probably be able to tell you better, but I think Iowa in general did pretty good with the guys they really wanted. Maybe with the exception being Robinson, and there's probably one or two guys in there that Iowa State landed that Iowa would have liked. But Thomas Meyer he's a really good prospect. He's a top in-state recruit, 4-star kid. Ironically enough, we're about to preview tight ends, right? Right, Mark? Is that how we're going to finish our last?
Unless there's anything else concerning Jacob Wallace coming in from Maryland.
No, I just, I think of the last guy that I haven't really studied him yet. I'll produce a video on him over on my channel here in the next day or so. But it just brings me back to Deshaun Lee, who was it 2 years ago when they signed him right before the late period began. And Deshaun Lee, very unheralded, like Jacob Wallace. Wallace had an offer from West Virginia, South Florida, but a lot of other G5 schools. And Deshaun Lee ends up being a starter really early in his career. It's a typical Phil Parker story. I know he's had his ups and downs, but adding DBs this late in the process probably is the one position that you're most comfortable with Phil Parker doing, because he's had a nice history of adding guys late, not just Lee, but go back in time. So we'll see. I'll break him down tomorrow. He's got good size, good wingspan. Probably needs to put on a little bit of weight, but who doesn't at this level? And I'm assuming he'll get there in the summer and get to work.
I'm going to find at some point, someone who will be willing to take on this tight end debate. I thought maybe one or two of our Miami contributors would want to take on that debate, and I think they did kind of kick it up. Well, actually, now I'm remembering we did have you over on the Miami channel, correct?
Yeah,
Corey? We had battled for the debate.
Yeah, I battled your guy,
the wholesome one, and
that's right, man.
No, he kind of backed off after a while. I think he finally got the message that it's not debatable. It's just not. It's all time. It is, but man, Iowa just has completely locked down this debate in the last 15 years or so. It's just astounding. And of course, Luke Lachey is the next one that I'm seeing is probably targeted in that 5th round type range, something in that range.
Honestly, you'd know better than I would, because to me, this is the first time in a long time that I've seen a situation quite like this, because Iowa's offense finally did change and really took away from tight end involvement for whatever reason. So I don't know what that's going to do, what that has done to Luke Lachey's stock. But boy, he was impressive when he did play his junior year. And then this year, I don't think he had too many drops, but he just wasn't targeted as much in this new offense. So I'll be intrigued to see where he ends up. And Yeah, there's reason for people that are kind of wondering about tight end play in 2025. I don't really know what to expect because the proof in the pudding tells me that they're looking more towards becoming a more receiver-oriented pass offense. And so what does that mean for guys like Addison Estringa, guys like Thomas Meyer, who's coming in as a freshman? I really like Michael Burt. Gavin Hoffman's also a second-year guy. But it's also a position group with a lot of potential and a lot of youth. This is I don't know the last time they were quite this young. Zach Ortworth, obviously this is going to be his third year, but he's played sparingly. I mentioned Addison Estringa, I can't believe he's a senior. That's absolutely nuts to me. But those two guys will be the leaders in that room, I would presume. And then, like I said, two very talented redshirt freshmen in Hoffman and Burt. And they still have Andrew Lynch. I believe he's the only non-scholarship tight end that they retained. So Johnny Pascuzzi left. There were a couple others whose names escape me at the moment, but I think at least one of the two of those guys ended up in the Missouri Valley Conference, FCS level. And like I said, they had Thomas Meyer. They also had Mason Woods in there, assuming he sticks at tight end. And who's the other guy that I'm missing? Eli Johnson from River Falls, Wisconsin, who's another solid prospect with good size at 6'5", 230. So, that's a position that inherently you don't expect young guys to be big factors early. But Iowa's sort of went away. I mean, they've figured out a way for guys like Ortworth and Estringa to contribute early. And now with Lachey gone and Pascuzzi, who did play as a walk-on, there are opportunities. But if they stay healthy, one would expect Estringa and Ortworth to be 1A and 1B.
Yeah, so to get back to those two and the core of this tight end group, even though they did have what it appears to be a strong recruiting class, don't know if those guys are going to get on the field. Between Zach Ortworth, and every time I say that name, I think of the ball that he caught against Wisconsin for like 50 yards, because at that point, and you were at that game, right? Wasn't that at Camp Randall?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so they won like 15-6 or something, but I think it was still a 12-6 game or 9-6 at the time, and they were in trouble. They were like deep in their own end. And I'm thinking Wisconsin can get a punt here. We got a big dramatic finish here. Maybe they, close it out with a game-winning drive. Boom, he goes for 50 and gets them out of trouble. And then they get the 2-score lead to finish off the Badgers. So I think of that. 11 catches for him, $133. Addison Estringa, 15 for 114. How would you distinguish those two players in terms of their contributions, what they do well?
Well,
is there any real distinguishing qualities there?
I'd have to look at. So what you just said, I think, is the most obvious distinguishing difference there. It's yards per catch. One guy, traditionally in this offense, the last couple of years, Estringa has been more of your shorter target guy, whereas Estringa has been better out in the open field and over the top. That would be how now ''maybe that'll change. I was, when Addison Estringa first committed, I was impressed with his size at the high school level. Iowa's got him listed at 6'4", 250. Ortworth, again, a little smaller, 6'3", 240. So maybe that lends to being more of the downfield threat. But that's how I would differentiate the two. We'll see what spring practice looks like, but it's probably a good 1A and 1B. Kind of like the tradition. I don't really like it as much as some people do, but the Lightning and Thunder relationship that some running back rooms have, like a LaShawn Daniels, Akram Wadley tandem. I think this is a nice difference to have, and I think Ortworth is probably improving as a blocker. That's probably one area where Estringa's, at least heading into last year at this time, was significantly ahead of him. But Ortworth came in along with Pascuzzi on a lot of goal line situations this past season, so I would anticipate he has probably improved in the trenches. And I mean, I talk about body size. Thomas Meyer and Eli Johnson, I mentioned him earlier, the 25 kid that's coming in from Wisconsin, another really impressive guy at 6'5", 230, and Thomas Meyer 6'5", 210. Mason's a little bit smaller. That's why I don't know what his future. I could see Mason Woods being a really good special teams guy early. But I won't be shocked, Mark, if one of these tight ends from the group of freshmen comes in and plays right away, because it's happened. It has happened. And I don't believe either one of those three have enrolled early. The only early enrollees that I'm aware of, Lucas Allgaier, I think, enrolled early. Joey Van Wetzinga enrolled early. Charles Bell is there. And then I think Cooney and Goucher. Running through the
8
list
total.
Here. Yeah. Okay. Did I name 8? Is that what it is? 8 total?
You've got...
I miss anybody in there?
Get the list right here. So these are the 8 enrollees. So there's 5 right there.
Oh, Alante Dean. I missed Alante. He's enrolled early. Okay. Yeah. And then Jimmy Sullivan enrolled early. That's right, because he was there for bowl prep. Yeah, that's a big group. That's as big of a group as I can recall that are there early enrollees. I think last year they had 2 or 3. Some years they have 1 or 2.
Is Iowa catching up with everyone else when it comes to early enrollees?
What does everyone else do with early enrollees, Mark? You tell me.
Many more than that. Yeah.
Really? Interesting.
Yes, well, we're more, I would say, in the 12 range for most. That would be kind of an average among
interesting
the big teams.
Yeah. That's I why is that? I don't know why Iowa would have been behind in that. I have no reason. I mean, I've talked to athletes that have said after they sign, they say, well, I wanted to enroll early, but my high school situation, I can't do it. So like, are other schools targeting guys? I can't believe imagine that whether or not they can enroll early is a part of their resume scouting report.
So based on the rankings, Thomas Meyer is supposed to be the guy. He's the best player in the state.
He's best player in the state, best player in the class, isn't he?
Yeah, overall? Best player in the class, best player in the state, 9th rated tight end in the country, in a top 150.
Well, I shouldn't. No, I'm sorry. Let's not forget about Epinesa. Let's not forget about Yosei, who's a 5-star. That's
goodness.
Speaking out of turn by anointing Thomas Meyer. He's the second. Thomas Meyer is the second best player.
Overall, the best player in the but
yes,
still,
overall best player in the class.
Still a top 150 best player.
Yes,
in the
absolutely.
state. Yeah, top 10 tight end. So
right.
He would be, if the scouts know what they're talking about, he would be expected to be the guy that would contribute if anyone does.
But neither one of those players, neither Yosei or Thomas Meyer, enrolled early. Right? Neither one of those guys is on the list I'm aware of. So that's interesting. And if you look through the guy, and Nate McNeil is another kid that I don't think we talked about. He's a running back who was enrolled early. So you've got tracking offense versus defense here. You got Jimmy Sullivan, Nate McNeil, who enrolled early, quarterback, running back. You got Allgaier, who's an offensive lineman, enrolled early. You have Wetzinga, who I believe is going to play on the defensive side, but I don't know that. So I guess we'll give that to defense. And then Goucher's defense, Cooney's defense, Bella's defense. So it's pretty even there. And then Alante Dean is defense. So, and then they did they've got a handful of transfers in there too, right? They got a couple of quarterbacks. Gronowski's not practicing this spring. Hank Brown is. He was with them for bowl prep. Jonah Pace, Bryce Hawthorne, a couple of lower level defensive linemen who will come in and try to contribute right away. And then Sam Phillips, the Chattanooga transfer. He's the guy that I'm most intrigued to see this spring, by the way. I know we're talking tight ends, but I want to see Sam Phillips, regardless of who's throwing the ball.
So I'm sure that we can easily have a debate on this, Corey, and put metrics to it. Levi is saying Iowa State is just the cooler program right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Based on what? I mean, based on what? The fact that their head coach was interviewing with NFL jobs this offseason, or what? I mean, what is so much cooler about that program? Because they finally won 10 games. They finally had their first.
I think that's actually it. Season. That's probably his point. That Iowa is a consistent winner, so they're not catching any attention.
Yeah,
when you're awful, and then you elevate.
Yeah, Iowa won 10 games with Deacon Hill and Spencer Petras. 2 different seasons, by the way.
Yes,
Think about that. Think about that. Hey, by the way, where's Spencer Petras projected to go in the draft? He's not projected to get drafted, but is he even on any boards like for late? He'll get signs. He'll get a chance somewhere in a camp, right? With what he did at Utah State, I'm assuming.
I guess. What did he do at Utah State?
Well, let's pull up his numbers.
Play
Should I pull up his numbers? Can I do that real quick?
I can do it. It's up to you.
Well, I'll pull it up here.
I've got all these. I got like 28 windows open here with all sorts of stuff. I got it.
All right, you got it.
Here we go. Spencer Petras, Utah State. Sorry, Spencer, I did not watch you play this year.
Well, it's because you don't care about G5 football, but go on.
Yeah, that's me.
Look at those numbers. I mean, what's amazing is every number went up. His passer rating went from a career high at Iowa in 2020 at 119 to 135. Okay. Every one of those numbers went up.
17 touchdowns, 11 picks in today's game is marginal.
Yeah, but he's throwing the ball more. So you're right. Interception percentage is higher, I guess. There's a stat that is higher. It's not a good stat to have. His touchdown percentage is much higher. I mean, he threw for his season high was 10 touchdowns at Iowa in 2021. Threw 17, threw for 65% through the air. Those are numbers that probably get you invited to a camp. I mean, if his shoulder's healthy, I can't imagine they're not, Mark. Come on.
Okay, I would not put money on it, but I'm not inviting Spencer Petras to my NFL camp.
I'm not either.
It's a waste of time. He's taking reps from somebody that's got a pulse.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. That's very rude to Spencer Petras, but I'll tell you this. I think you're wrong. I think he'll get invited somewhere. Would I invite him? No, because he's. Okay. But there's
I
more.
would lay a small wager that he's not getting invited anywhere.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, a very small one.
Well, we'll come. When is the draft here? It's April.
The last weekend of April.
Okay, now we got a long ways to wait still. But I haven't heard anything about what his plans are. I'm assuming he wants to get into coaching, but I'm guessing he wants to play in the NFL if he has any chance, and he believes that he can. Hey, more power. You know what? I don't know that I expected him to be able to go somewhere like Utah State and have success, and he did. Now that's a G5 program that took a big step back this year. They lost their head coach first month of the season with a scandal, and he persevered, played through that and tribulation, whatever you want to call it. So I'm sure. I mean, think about it. If you were his dad, not to get all sentimental here, but if you were Spencer Petras' dad, you'd be proud of what he did, recovering
absolutely
all of what he did at Iowa, and then the surgery and the hate, and then he goes to Utah State and plays pretty well. All those numbers go up. You'd be happy for your kid.
Absolutely. But I'm talking as
you're not his dad.
GM.
You're not his dad.
Yes, I can relate to being the father of two kids and them playing athletics, and you're proud as heck. You just that means the world to you. And to play big time college football, that's amazing. That's a remarkable thing that very few people have the ability or the opportunity to do. So, or are willing to work hard enough to do it. So that's to be commended. I will not play my cute little 30-second promo because I'm here to do it. But folks, if you just want to witness a bloodbath, Ohio State, Michigan, all everything debate call-in shows coming up. That's a Monday, February 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be on the main channel. What the heck? I own the whole deal, so we'll simulcast on the Michigan and Ohio State channels as well. We will dominate the network airwaves, and I will be taking nothing but Michigan calls. Ohio State fans, we appreciate you. I don't need your help, though, so you don't need to call. You can just listen. All right. Well, Corey, we will put on hold our review of the 2023 recruiting class because I don't know if anybody else is interested in this, but I certainly will enjoy you running through past recruiting classes, and we'll start with the most recent. I know 24 is the most recent, but the most reasonable one that you at least have 2 seasons to kind of look at guys, and then we'll go backwards from there and just see the booms and the busts and what happened. One suggestion concerning your content idea or my content idea of the top 50, I would time this out to end on the first day of August camp. That's what I would do.
See, I was initially thinking about the timing aspect with 105.
Yeah, I think once you get into August camp, you get enough to talk about. You don't have to. Right. I think that would be a good lead up to August camp.
Yeah. It won't be every day. I can tell people that right now. It will not be.
Why not? Oh. No, that's how you have to do it. You do a 50-day countdown to August camp.
If I do that, it won't get done, Mark. Just full disclosure.
You batch them.
Oh, I batch them. Ooh,
yes. Start recording in them now.
The problem is there are days where other stories take precedent, breaking news stories and whatnot. And I don't
release 2 stories in one day, 2 videos.
Why can't I can just go. Listen, I can batch all I want, but I can just, hey, when it's a slow day, you throw out a top 50 story.
It's the purpose. It's a 50-day countdown. It's a 50-day countdown to the first day of camp. That'd be great.
You got all your minions doing all your work for you now, Mark. You're spoiled. You can do all this stuff and time everything up, and I'm trying to pull my load all by myself over here.
I would, if I had more resources, I would rate the top 100 players in college football, which, by the way, reminds me, this has nothing to do with anyone that's listening, watching. None of you care about this, but I just have to vent for 15 seconds. I went nuts on Garrett Green, the West Virginia quarterback, because West Virginia fans were complaining that their precious Garrett Green was not ranked in the top 100 players of college football. And I laid them to waste and said, he's not a top 100 player in college football. And then he went out and proved it by having a horrible season.
Wasn't he at Bowling Green before? I mean, who cares? Who cares about Garrett Green?
Well, West Virginia fans do, so I'm not discounting them. But I'm just saying that there was quite this back and forth on Twitter, and I had all sorts of, and some good people going after me, our buddy Coos, Coos' Corner and so forth. And I was like, this guy's not a top 100 player. I'm telling you this. College football. Then he went out through like just as many interceptions as TDs and had a bad season, and his coach got fired. All right. Anyway, catch Corey with the record of the post-game wrap-up, correct? Later tonight?
Yes, it will be released later tonight, so people maybe check it out in the morning, and then we'll have content tomorrow on signing day, and then Thursday live post-game coverage for another big women's basketball game. They're back close to 500 and got to keep winning to be on the right side of the bubble, so should be a fun week for women's hoops. And who knows, with the men's basketball team, they got 2 really good opponents coming to town this week.
Very good. Next Tuesday, folks, we'll be back with Corey, of course, for another Hawkeyes Live, another position preview. And we will see you then. In the meantime, from the Hawkeye of the Storm, for all of your Iowa athletics coverage. See you next Tuesday.